Good evening and welcome to the Sound Off program. My name is Linda Kirker. I host the show and I'm so appreciative that you tuned in tonight. I think we're going to have some very interesting topics for you to hear tonight. If you are motivated after we get up and running and get started, if you are motivated to call in to make a brief comment or ask a question, you are so welcome to do that. Before I introduce my guest, which I'll do shortly, I just wanted to say something about what's going on at the national level. These folks are not going to listen to me, the people in Congress. They don't listen to most of us anyway. But I want to say stop quibbling about who might have said what, when, and who didn't say what. Stop acting like little school children and get on with the business of this country. Securing our border for our national safety. Paying down our debt. Restoring our military to strength, to protect us. That is their job down there. And they're too busy quibbling over little things instead of doing the work for the people who elected them. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I got it off my chest. Now I want to introduce my guest, Rob Roper.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for coming back on.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Rob is the president of the Ethan Allan Institute, a Vermont think tank, and he does a great job, and it's a wonderful organization. I want to encourage you to, if you can, to make whatever kind of donation you might be able to make, and in turn you will receive this newsletter, which is filled with facts, information about what's going on in our state. And it's just a wealth of information. If you want to know what's happening in our state, a lot of research is done by these folks. And I love getting this in the mail. I sit down and I underline things like I did with this particular newsletter. A lot of smart folks working there, and they're on top of it. And if you want to be informed and know what's going on, Ethan Allan Institute is the place to get your information, not just the newsletter, but online. It's ethanallan.org, and they keep track of the votes of the legislators, so you can check on each one on every vote that's been taken. If they do a roll call, right?
They do a roll call. That's one of our most popular programs that we put together is legislative roll call profiles. We do each roll call, and you can see how everybody voted on a particular item. But we also, at the end of each legislative session, compile all the votes for a particular legislator. So when you were in the legislature, Linda, if we were doing this, you could click on the Linda Kirker page, and you'd see a picture of you. And this is another feature of it. Not only all the roll calls, well, not all the roll calls, but the key roll calls from that session. Usually, it's somewhere between 10 to 15.
Wow.
That we signal out. The budget stuff, you know, most of the key fiscal votes. So you get a quick picture of how you voted, but also all your contact information. So not just at the end of the session, but during the session, if you have a legislator that you want to reach out to. You can do this on the legislative webpage, but we go further in that on our page, we have their email address and their phone numbers, which you can get on the legislative page, but also their social media addresses. So if they have a Facebook page or a Twitter account,
good.
You can click on the link there and contact them through social media. And also, a new feature that we just did for this legislative session is we have the addresses for the local papers. So if you want to write a letter to the editor and say, Linda Kirker voted the wrong way or Linda Kirker voted the right way and I want to compliment her, you can go to the Ethan Allan Institute roll call profile page, click on your thing, and then it'll say, you know, the St. Albans Messenger and maybe the Enosburg paper, whatever, the list of all the local papers, and you click on that and it'll pop up. You know, and you're ready to write your local paper.
That's fantastic.
So it's a really wonderful tool, and
what a resource.
and I hope more people will take advantage of it, particularly, now that they're back.
They're back.
As Thomas Jefferson said, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. So
Amen to
this is a
that.
tool that really helps you be that vigilant, informed citizen who can be active.
It is so important. And it's not like you have to go looking everywhere. It's one site, and you can, as you said, Rob, you can get all the information that you might be looking for. And the fact that you put the newspapers in the local areas where those legislators live, you can look at the voting record and say, "Ooh, I really like that," or "Ooh, I didn't like that." If you are informed about the issue, you can write a letter to the editor about that.
So yeah, it really is. It's sort of a one-stop shop for that, and I do hope more people will log on to ethanallan.org. There's a little bug in the menu that says roll calls, and if you click on that, you should be able to find what I'm talking about very easily, and use it. And you can share it. It's a link, so if you want your neighbors to know how Linda Kirker voted on this particular issue, you can just cut and paste that profile link into social media or into an email and send it around, and it's just that. So you don't have to, deal with the whole legislative body. We do them for all 180 representatives and senators, but you can.
What a job!
It takes it takes a lot of time. So I really hope people will
Take
advantage of it because we do put a lot of work into it. And,
oh my gosh!
And it keeps getting better. And we had our first roll call report of this session was on marijuana and the legalization of marijuana, and they took that vote. It was 81 to 63 in favor. So if you want to find out if your representative how they voted, you can click on that roll call report.
I know we had 3 people in Franklin County who supported it. I don't think any of them was a Republican. One was a moderate. Independent, and I think the other 2 were Democrats, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, that is a topic. Marijuana legalization for recreational use is something that I cannot understand why anybody would support that, frankly. And I did my thing, and I wrote to the governor, and I encouraged other people to call his office, because I know he said he wouldn't sign it unless there was a way to verify the level of intoxication with marijuana. And there's no such entity. There's no such thing now. So that tells me, no, he should vote no. But the understanding is he's going to vote yes.
Well, I guess we can wait and see if he does or if he doesn't. But you're right, he did say he would. So
now, I'm trying to remember from my days in the legislature, he only has so many days to sign or let it just go by. I thought it was either 3 or 5 days. Do you know?
Yes. I don't know the number of days off the top of my head, but yes, you're correct. There's a certain amount of time that has to go by before he signs it or vetoes it. Or I guess it's a certain number of days that he has to veto it. If he doesn't veto it or sign it within that, I think it becomes law.
Really? If he doesn't do anything, it becomes law?
Now you got me confused, because maybe if he doesn't sign it, it doesn't become law. And isn't that what they call a pocket veto?
That could be. I'm not remembering.
I should have brushed up on this.
That's okay. Now we'll both look into it. Maybe somebody out there who's in the legislature would be able to call in and set us straight on that one. But I thought there was a certain number of days, a certain amount of time that the governor has to sign it. Or I think you're right, it becomes law. Although I don't know without his signature why it would become law. I don't know. Anyway, we won't belabor that. So you had written an article here in the newsletter about the certificate of need law. Why don't you explain to people what that's about? what the certificate of need is about, the state committee. And go ahead and...
Well, a certificate of need law goes back to the Nixon administration. I think it was a federal program in which the government paid, rectified a system where government used to pay hospitals for unused beds, essentially, unused equipment. Because on the theory that, in case there's ever an epidemic or something, you want to have the capacity there to handle an unexpected inflow of patients. So they paid hospitals to maintain a high level of accessibility that was probably beyond what the market would bear. Mm-hmm. So of course what hospitals did is they said, well, let's build out the infrastructure and they'll pay us to have this stuff, and we don't have
make it bigger.
So let's make it bigger and we'll take advantage of the government program. So they said, okay, we're going to have these certificate of need laws put in. So and the federal government encouraged states to put them into place and to have these boards. And so the hospitals and doctors or whoever would have to get permission, a certificate of need, prove that there is a need for the
expansion,
whatever it is that you're going to be doing. If you're going to be buying an MRI, you have to get permission. If you're going to be starting a surgical center like the one they just did in Colchester, they had to get permission for that. But the thing that happened is after just a couple of years of the certificate of need, it didn't actually constrain costs. It actually, the cost exploded with the certificate of need laws coming into place. So the federal government actually killed it. And they said, we're not doing this anymore. And we encourage you states to get rid of your certificate of need laws as well. And without the government funding, not most states, but many states got rid of the certificate of need. And there are still, I think, 30-something states that have them, but some states just have a couple of things. Vermont, of course, has more things that you have to get a certificate of need for than any other state. It's 30 categories of health care.
Government control.
And yeah, and it's essentially a permission slip. And the Green Mountain Care Board is the body that you now...
5 people, right?
Five political appointees. And just recently, we've had these since the 70s, but so this is a new thing that they're the body that has to do it. It used to be a group of volunteers. I forget how many people were on it, but it was the public service board, and it was a group of volunteers who did this. We didn't pay them anything. Now the Green Mountain Care Board does it with a $2-point-something million budget. So it's getting more expensive, more ridiculous.
Wait, the budget is their salaries?
Their salaries and their staff's salaries and...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so...
to control.
Yeah, but getting back to the story of the certificate of needs, of need laws, is the great example is Copley Hospital. Copley Hospital put in for a certificate of needs laws to do an expansion of their orthopedic surgery center. Mm-hmm. They have a wonderful, wonderful program there. Everybody, if you're going to have orthopedic surgery, wants to go to Copley.
I know several people.
So they got their certificate of need. It was granted to them. But now the Green Mountain Care Board is threatening to revoke their certificate of need because they're doing too many surgeries, and they're bringing in too much revenue, and they're saying, well, you can't make any money, or you're limited in the amount of revenue you're allowed to bring in. I think it's like 4.7% revenue or something like that. Because that's how they control costs. They ration care, and Green Mountain and Copley is by being more efficient, by attracting more people to come to their surgical center, by basically doing a good job.
Quality?
No, it doesn't matter because really what healthcare, controlling cost of healthcare in Vermont is healthcare rationing, and this is a perfect example of it. But it's important to note, Linda, that the states that do not have certificate of needs laws have better care, they have cheaper care, and they have greater access to care.
Well, they're not paying.
And you think about it, because Copley is competing with the UVM Medical Center, and they're stealing customers from them. They're doing it by being more efficient.
That's business.
And providing better service. Vermont MRI came in and they had to beg for their certificate of need. It costs money, a lot of money, to go through this process because you have to hire lawyers and you have to hire accountants. You have to, it took them 2 years, I think.
Where are they?
They're in South Burlington. The surgical center that's just opened up in
Colchester,
in Colchester, it took
$250,000.
$250,000 to go through this process, and it took them 2 years. So that's 2 years people aren't getting service, and that's $250,000 that's being added to the costs of the services they provide because they have to recoup that money somehow. So less service, more money. It's a great illustration. So we think that one of the things that they should be doing in this legislative session is repealing Vermont's Certificate of Needs laws. And I don't think that they're going to do it. But
competition is good for the customer. You have choices, and it puts the providers of the services on the spot to be the better option for the customer.
Yep.
So it raises up the quality of the care.
Yeah.
And probably lowers the cost.
in most cases, it does. And particularly, I brought up the example of Vermont MRI. The cost to do a procedure at Vermont MRI is 1/2 to 1/3 what it costs at Fletcher Allen. Or no, it's not Fletcher Allen anymore, UVM Medical Center. But they don't want to let people go there. Because
why doesn't the customer, the patient, have a choice?
And oftentimes they do, because it's an open MRI system, so it's different. So if you're a little claustrophobic and you don't want to go into the tube, they have it open, so it's like sort of like a sandwich. So yeah, I think a lot of people would like to choose that option if they don't want to, be in. If they have a little bit of claustrophobia. So it's about control. It's about the ability to ration care, and it ultimately doesn't help patients. It doesn't help taxpayers. It's just it's a terrible program, and this is the thing, Linda. I think that just getting into a more broad conversation about what's happening in Montpelier, we have so many problems, and our government is always saying, what else do we need to do to solve a problem?
Get out of the way.
And examples are the $15 minimum wage, paid family leave, these programs that they want to put forward. Nothing we're doing is working. What else can we do to make it work? When the real answer is you need to stop doing things that are creating obstacles to people solving problems on their own.
Regulations.
And it's like the Certificate of Need. You want to lower healthcare costs, let 5, 10 open MRI centers come in and start competing with one another on cost and convenience.
Sure.
Let a whole bunch of surgical centers come in. If some of them go out of business and they're privately owned, it's no skin off the taxpayers' nose, because it's individuals who are investing in this because they think it's going to work. I mean, the idea of Certificate of Need, if there's a need, the market will respond to the need.
Absolutely. That's business.
Yeah, the fact that 5 bureaucrats are going to sit in Montpelier and determine what the need, a community's healthcare needs are, the odds of them getting it right are 0. And we're the ones who all pay the price.
So who owns the hospitals?
Well, that's a good question. They're nonprofit organizations, but they're really they're becoming subsidiaries of the state, as are Blue Cross Blue Shield and the insurance companies. They're becoming monopolies. They're state-regulated monopolies, and whenever you have a monopoly, it's not efficient, and it's detrimental to the consumer.
Well, it takes away choice, for one thing.
It takes away choice, and when it's a sanctioned monopoly by the government, it takes away any incentive to innovate.
It's controlled.
It takes away any incentive to innovate and create better, more efficient ways of delivering whatever it is.
Makes me think of socialism.
Yeah.
Government control. This country was founded to be a government of, for, and by the people. Now it feels like it's a government of, for, and by the government.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of truth to what you say.
And unless we, as you said earlier, Rob, unless we, the people, step up, pay attention, know what's going on, and make a donation to Ethan Allan Institute, and you'll get this newsletter, and you'll have that website to make sure that you're going to really get some insight into what is going on in our state. Really important that we are informed citizens, or we can be just rolled over and government, the parent.
Yeah, it's becoming more expensive to live here, and those are the problems that are facing the state, Linda. We have our workforce is shrinking. That's the number of people who are working in the state is decreasing. We have an aging population, so a lot of people are retiring and leaving the workforce. The young people who are graduating from college are moving out of the state, so they're not replacing those workers as they come in. And those are the taxpayers. That's the tax base.
Well, 2,000 left, right? Taxpayers.
If you have fewer people paying taxes and a greater number of people who are needing services, it becomes an unsustainable proposition. So we need to get people to stay here. We need to get productive people to stay here. We need to get productive people to move here. And the things that the state is doing currently aren't fitting that bill. Vermont was one of only 3 states in the entire union between 2010 census and today that has lost population. People leaving.
Surprise there.
And the other states that have lost population one is West Virginia, which Michael Barone, who's a sort of the dean of politics in Washington, D.C., he founded and now co-writes the Almanac of American Politics. A brilliant guy. Says, okay, the reason that the population is shrinking in West Virginia is because of Obama's war on coal. I mean, you know, so that makes sense. They shut down the coal mines and they shut down coal.
Yes, it
producing.
does.
They lose. The other one is that's the number 1 state. The number 3 state is Illinois. Illinois has done a lot of things. They're sort of ahead of the Vermont curve, and it's because of pensions. They've made their pension system for state employees and municipal employees so lucrative, and that they can't afford to pay it anymore. So their taxes are spiraling up and up and up, and the people who are forced to pay the taxes are saying, I'm getting out of here. And they're leaving. Vermont is just a little bit behind Illinois when it comes to that problem of unfunded pension liabilities that are going to explode. But 2 is Vermont. We're in between those three.
So we're number 2
in terms of percentage. And the reason Barone says is because of the Woodstock generation, the Bernie Sanderses and the Howard Deans that came here, and they have liberalized the culture and the politics to such an extent that nobody wants to move here anymore.
Well, I know a lot of people talking about getting out.
And lots of people are talking about getting out, and it's a trend that really needs to be turned around. And I wrote my most recent op-ed is called "If you want to turn around, you need to change direction," and that's the advice I have for Vermont. If we want to turn the state around, we need to change the direction, and the direction we've taken is think about this, Linda. We have the most progressive income tax system in the country, or the top 3. California may have run past. We used to have it, but now we're probably in the top 3. California's maybe more. We have the most progressive property tax system in the country, with our Act 60 formula and the income sensitivity and all that. It's the most progressive property tax system in the country. We have one of the highest, we had at one point the highest minimum wage. We're now behind a couple of states, but if they go to $15 minimum wage, like they're talking about, we'll have the highest minimum wage. We spend more money per student in our K-12 system than any other state. We've been expanding and investing in pre-K. And as I said, we are one of 3 states to lose population. We're the only state in the union to have seen an increase in our poverty level in 2016. The Ethan Allan Institute is a more libertarian, conservative think tank. Our across-the-aisle peers, the Public Assets Institute, smart people. They just look at things differently than we, but they just came out with a report saying that the gap between the rich and poor is growing faster in Vermont. It's growing faster. And the reason that we have those things, Linda, is not because we're not progressive. It is because we are progressive.
Well, progressive doesn't mean progress.
No, in most cases it's regressive. In most cases it's regressive. But I want people to really think about this, because we have, as I said, we have the most progressive policies in the state. We're the most liberal state. Somebody just came out with a calculation. Vermont's the most liberal state. We have these policies. We spend a lot on. We have so many people who are on some form of Medicaid in the state. It's a higher. It's,
1 in 3,
it's
right?
Between 1 in 4 and 1 in 3, somewhere in there, about 30%. That's extremely generous. We have one of the most generous welfare packages in the state. The Cato Institute did a calculation, I think it was in 2014, that showed that a welfare package in Vermont is the equivalent of about $42,000 a year of taxable income. It's about $37,000 worth of.
But do they pay
cash.
taxes on that?
No, so it's about $37,000 worth of cash benefit, or not cash, but cash equivalent benefits with housing and child care and all that stuff.
What I'm asking is
But no, they don't pay tax on it. So it's but it's a $42,000
value.
income. You'd have to, a person making $42,000 worth of income, they get taxed on it, and it's the $37,000 amount that the welfare person, that somebody on welfare is going to get. And we have this horrible opioid crisis. And I got to tell you, Linda, I think that's because government in this state has just sucked the meaning out of people's lives, because they do everything they try to do everything for you. If somebody does everything for you, then what purpose do you have in life?
Exactly. None. You become controlled. You don't have a lot of inspiration or aspiration to better yourself. You know, if you can get paid to sit at home.
Yeah, and you're.
I can't imagine.
If you're sitting at home bored, what are the kind of things that are going to attract you to keep you occupied and interested in getting through the day? I mean,
things that aren't exactly
things that aren't particularly healthy, and things that can have really long-term negative impact on you.
Well,
so
yeah, we have a number of issues going on, and of course we have, you know, a liberal state, as you mentioned, Bernie and Howard Dean, et cetera, and it's frightening. It's really frightening, because the more that government does for you, the more control government has over you, and the less control you have.
And that's their objective.
Of course it is.
I really do think that's their objective, is to create a permanent underclass that is a reliable voting base for them. And I'm sorry if that seems like it's a cynical way of looking at things, but that's the way it's turning out. And we're seeing it. It's genuinely harder for people to move up the social ladder today than it has been in the past. And I got to tell you, people like Bernie Sanders do not want people moving up out of the social, because if they can keep you trapped in poverty, then you're their voter.
Yep.
And if you move out of there, you may not be you're their voter anymore. So their objective is to keep you in there and keep you down. And you know, it's really frightening, because and I have people who are business owners in the state, and this is a problem. Governor Scott alluded to this in his State of the State address a couple of weeks ago. There are lots of jobs that are available.
6 different companies.
There are lots of help wanted signs around. But again, if you have to make $42,000 to compete with a welfare check, what are you going to do?
Well, there is something now where I think it's Maine and New Hampshire talking about if you're on welfare, you have to work or be getting some sort of training.
Yep. Maine is doing that. Maybe New Hampshire is, probably. They tend to do things that way. But here's what I want people to think about, Linda. Once you get into that system, once you get into, say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to take the job that has a career that offers me the opportunity for upward mobility. I'm going to take the check. You are pretty much saying to yourself, I am going to be poor for the rest of my life, because you'll never get out of that. It's not a safety net. It's a spider web.
Well,
I forget who said it first. Lots of people have said it. It's not but it's true, because there's this thing that they call the benefits cliff, where once you'll have people who are offered a promotion, and they'll say, you're a great worker, I want you to take the next step, and maybe become a manager, maybe just take a pay raise because I appreciate what you're doing. And I hear employers say this all the time, and say, I don't want to do that, because if I take that next step, then that means I'm going to lose this benefit. Yeah. And if I lose that benefit is worth more to me.
It's a trap.
In a value. And that's exactly right. It's a trap to keep you below ever breaking through that ceiling. And we have to fix that. We have to fix that.
I know we do. And it's a mindset change that really has to, if we respect people, we want to have them have an opportunity, encourage them to have an opportunity to be self-sufficient, to be productive, to feel good about yourself, and to be an example for your children, a positive example. Strong work ethic, personal responsibility, all of these things that were ingrained in me when I was growing up by my family. Yeah. But it was Brian Doobie who said, and I'll never forget it, welfare is not meant to be a hammock. It's meant to be a trampoline. In
theory. Or in principle.
Well, it should be.
But it's not.
It
should be, but it's not. That's not the way the system works. You know what? The single most determinative thing that you can track with people. Oh, do we have a phone call?
Can you hold that
Sure.
thought? Caller, welcome to the program. What would you like to say?
Well, what would I like to say? Well, this is a Linda Kirker Republican show, and that's why I had to call in.
Then how come you've been on the show?
Well, hopefully we didn't ruin your show a couple of weeks ago when Don Tesher, myself, and Jimmy Fitzgerald were on.
I'm sure it was excellent. I just picked up the DVD, so I'll be viewing it, and I will let you know. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure it was fine, and I appreciate your all coming on when I was under the weather. But you know what? I don't think of this as a Republican show. I think of this as the people's show, because I care, and I want people to know what's happening. If they can accept the information or not, but I appreciate having the opportunity to share what's happening.
Yeah, that girl you had on last week was outstanding.
Yes, yep, and I hope a lot of people watched. We had more calls than ever, so. Well, I'm just going to keep going.
Well, I'm glad you are. We'll be getting into our new building sometime around the mid-April.
Well, that'll be a nice birthday present for me.
Yeah, it's looking good. It's all enclosed now, and we're sheetrocking and we've got all the electrical in, all the piping for the heating system, ventilation system is going in now, so it's starting to look pretty good.
That's going to be great. I'll look forward to that very much.
Yeah, but this is my opinion. I don't think Bob Roper will ever agree with me. Is that I think there should be a two-tier system as far as wages. Kids that are in high school, minimum wage. People that have graduated from high school, they should at least get a $15 an hour, because what's happening is people are staying on social services because they're not getting even up to that. They get all the benefits, but there's no incentive for them to get off. We need to work with them to provide babysitters, to give them the training to get them off of social services. When I worked for the city, I know one family, it went from the mother and father right up through the kids, and I knew the kids all through the 38 years that I worked for the city. So I think we need to have like a two-tier wages.
Well, how about this? I have been known to say that if we're helping people who need assistance, what is their responsibility in return for the benefits that they're getting?
Well, giving something back to society, because if we give them put them back to work, and they're getting a halfway decent wage, they're going to feel more better about themselves, to do better, to advance, as long as we don't cut, like their daycare. If you cut the daycare because you made $20 extra that month, what gives an incentive for that person to want to do better because you're cutting their services like you guys were just talking about a few minutes ago?
Well, that's one more thing now that government's providing is daycare. It's parent care, but now it's daycare. What was I just going to say? Oh, shoot. I am so set against government deciding what a person should earn. I think that is between the worker and the employer. And if you want to earn more money, you go in at whatever salary or hourly wage you agree upon, and then you work your way up and you make yourself valuable to that business or that employer. And if you work your fanny off and you're there early and you make suggestions as to how to make things better, and maybe you stay late now and then because you're needed, then you become very valuable, and you should receive a greater benefit in your pay. And if that doesn't happen, then you move on because you're a valuable employee. I've done that. I have done that. I just said, hey, you know what? I'm working my fanny off here. I'm doing two people's work. And you won't give me $1 an hour raise? You have my resignation.
Yeah, but there's some employers that when it's an employer's market out there will try to pay as minimum as they can, to get that employee in.
Well, that's
why a lot of places, have a heavy turnover. You may have 25 people that start today, and after they see the type of work they have to do, $10.50 an hour, it's worth more than this.
And that's the market driving things. If you can't employ somebody for $10.50 an hour because nobody wants to do the work for that, then you are forced to raise the wage if you want to have somebody doing the work. Or you can go out and, like a lot of fast food chains are doing now, and say, well, we're not going to pay them $15 an hour. We're going to have a tablet and have the customer come in and just push the button and say what they want, and the tablet communicates to the person who's operating the grill what to make. And there's even a robot now that'll cook the hamburger.
Really?
As well.
Yeah, well, I like these restaurants that say up to $12 an hour. I mean, that's false advertisement.
Well, maybe it depends on your level of experience.
Yeah.
You have to earn your way in life. I don't like government determining what a person should be paid, but that's just my view. The more money you want to make, the harder you have to work, the more you have to prove yourself.
But as far as a two-tiered system goes, that's certainly better than having just a flat $15 minimum wage. But if you tried to push that, I think that you would see a lot of people holler bloody murder, because what companies would do is they would start just employing the young teenagers,
the younger ones,
to do a lot of the jobs, and to put the other people out of work.
Well, there's another.
Yeah, but our Republican president just gave a big tax deduction to all these corporations to invest back in their employees and back into their companies, and I hope they do that.
And in many cases, it looks like they are.
Yeah.
But a great example, everybody sort of always takes pot shots at Walmart, but Walmart's one of the companies that's pioneering a $15 minimum wage, not because they're being forced to do it, but because they need to pay $15 in order to retain employees.
Yeah, but Walmart doesn't pay $15 an hour for the people that are they're full time out there, because they also have the availability to get social services, because they don't pay enough, and they don't give them any benefits. They try to keep you below the 35-hour limit.
Well, that's the other thing that a lot of companies will do, and that's a reflection of Obamacare, is that a lot of people who were working 40 hours were cut back to 29, creating a government wanting to help, maybe with pure motives, but they pass a law saying, okay, you got to give everybody the health insurance who's working more than 30 hours a week. So okay, well, you're Linda, you're now working 29 hours a week. Because the money doesn't come from nowhere. The money comes from, the government can mandate that the employer pay $15 an hour. But they can't mandate that the consumer buy the product, which is where the money comes from to pay the employee $15 an hour. And if the customer doesn't buy the product, then the money doesn't exist to pay the money to pay that, so that the employer gets reduced hours, or they get fired, or they get replaced by a tablet, because that's what the value of that service actually is.
Yeah, and the other thing is that in New Hampshire, what is it, $7.25 an hour?
It's $7.25. It's tied to the federal minimum wage in New Hampshire, and you look at the people who cross the border now to save 6% on the sales tax. Well, if you're a business owner and you run an operation that's dependent on a lot of unskilled labor, minimum wage area labor, why would you ever have a business here in Vermont? Why would you start one here? Why would you keep one here when you could cross the Connecticut River and essentially save 50% of your labor costs? It's again, creating a terrible disincentive. And this is what they found in Seattle. Seattle is the city out in Washington that has implemented a plan to get to $15 minimum wage. They went from $9.40 or something like that to $11, and then they raised it again to $13, and the next step, either this year or next year, is $15. And at the $13 minimum wage level, they found that employees who are low-wage employees, which by their definition is $19 an hour and under, lost on average $1,500 a year due to cutbacks in hours after this was put in place.
Well, it's a fine line, but if government gets out of the way and let the employer and the employee work out an agreement, then we're all set.
And everybody seems to think, well, if you lower the minimum wage, then all these people are going to get the minimum wage. But an interesting insight from, I think it was Senator Ann Cummings, who talked about New Hampshire. She's like, I'm driving around New Hampshire and I see all these help wanted signs, and none of the help wanted signs in New Hampshire are for $7.25. They're all for $10 an hour, $12 an hour.
No kidding.
$50, because nobody's going to work for $7.25. Just as the caller pointed out, it's like you go in there and say, well, it's not worth it to me to work for $7.25. That $7.25 is not of comparable value to the labor that I'm putting in. So I'm not going to do it.
Right.
So the employer says, well, then I'll have to pay you more.
Exactly.
And they do. And it'll set that wage. And there may be some people who will work for $7.25 because they, teenager, needs money for gas, movies to take his girlfriend or out on a date, that's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's a great starting wage for people. And then they get some experience at 14, 15, 16 years old. They learned how to come to work on time and treat their employer with respect and treat the customers with respect. It's really a license to learn.
Yes, absolutely. I think work, as I told the students when I had an opportunity to speak with them, work is a good four-letter word, and they all laughed. But it is. I am so grateful that I had parents who taught me about work from an early age. Always had jobs to do. Bigger I got, the bigger the jobs got. And they expected me, they had high expectations about how well I should do that job. And that was a gift. That was definitely a gift that's helped me through life. So anyway, thank you, my parents.
Well, before the caller called, I started to say what the single most determinative factor in avoiding poverty is. Do you know what it is?
For the individual or
for any individual. This they can track. This is scientifically proven, mathematically proven. There is one thing that if you do not want to be poor, you should be this.
I can think of several things, but I would say a work ethic.
Married.
Married?
Married.
Explain.
Married people are the most likely people not to live in poverty. And it makes a whole lot of sense. If you find the right partner in life and you stay together and it's You've got two people to divide labor. You've got, different people being good at different things. It's a team. It's a team effort.
What if you're both uneducated and don't really want to work, but you get married?
The single biggest
Okay,
of poverty, to escape poverty, is to be married. And, and particularly it is don't have children until you are married.
Right.
Graduate from school. Don't have children until you're married. And then when you're married, stay married. That's how you, those are, that's the map.
That makes sense. And work
That's
together. Work together.
That's the map for escaping poverty. But so many of the programs that we have discourage all of those things.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Okay, I'll accept that. Okay. Now, do you want to talk about the Climate Action Commission or, let me see, the Essex Plan?
Sure. Or we can talk about the carbon tax.
Okay.
That's another thing. You go to Montpelier, and there's so many things. And you know what it drives me crazy? They say, oh, you can afford to pay just a little bit more. Come on, Linda, you can afford to pay just a little bit more. This per parcel fee, for everything, anything. It's just you can afford to pay just a little bit more.
I see.
And for the per parcel fee to clean up the lake, it's just $1 a month surcharge on your property tax. It's just $12. But then they passed a law last session about what it costs to get your car inspected, because they have this new thing. So now it's $60 to get your car inspected instead of $29.
It's more than that.
In some places it's more, but generally that. But so it's just an extra $30. So $12 and $30.
But it puts some people out of business.
Yeah, it
They
does.
decided they were not going to buy this $1,500 unit or whatever to be able to do the kind of inspection that was required. So they stopped doing inspections. So then you have fewer people doing them, so they can raise the price.
So, yep, they can raise the price, and they do, but you can afford it. You can afford to pay just that little bit more.
Oh, yeah?
Green Mountain Power just got a 5% rate increase approved. And the reason that they get a 5% rate increase, or they need the 5% rate increase, is because of our environmental policy that favors renewable energy. And this, I think, is a good thing for people to start to understand, and I think they will start to understand it because it's going to get a lot more expensive to have power. And the reason is because the government is forcing us to buy power that is more expensive than other forms of electricity that are available on the market. And net metering, that's when somebody puts solar panels on their house. Usually they get some sort of a subsidy to put the solar panels on their house, government subsidy that we the taxpayers pay for. And then the way that net metering works is that if you generate more electricity through your solar panels than you're using to power your house, excuse me, the power company has to buy that surplus power from you at a rate that's about more than three times the market rate for power.
Why?
Because they want to incentivize people putting solar panels on their house. But we, the ratepayers, are covering that nut.
Well, I don't like being, as an individual, I don't like being forced to subsidize all of these different kinds of projects that I personally am not interested in. And yet I'm being taxed to subsidize things that I don't want. And that really bugs me.
And it should. And that's the beauty of free market and the morality of free market economics. And it really comes down to what the definition of, the best definition I've had for free market economics, excuse me, my cold is catching up with me with all the talking, is when people can come together to make decisions amongst each other without force or fraud. So whenever government gets involved, government forces you to do something.
Have some water.
I will, thank you.
Yes. Well, the Essex Plan would ultimately be a $240 million tax on gasoline at 32 cents a gallon increase, heating oil and diesel fuel at 40 cents a gallon, and natural gas and propane at 24 cents a gallon. Now, I don't know exactly what the state's tax is on a gallon of gasoline. I used to know, but I don't remember.
I think Vermont, it's about 19 cents a gallon, or is that the federal rate?
I don't remember.
But the total is around 60 cents a gallon. A little less, I think.
Well, let me see. Yeah, they're another major proposal. Vermont taxpayers, to tax Vermonters for driving our cars and heating our homes.
Well, that's what it is. It's the carbon tax.
Yep.
I mean, they've tried passing a carbon tax for the past 3 years now. It always gets shot down because people understand carbon tax means, they say, we want to tax the things we want less of, like gasoline and diesel and home heating oil, and and then we'll get more of the things we like. Well, think about that in real practical terms. If you tax gasoline and diesel and home heating oil, the things that you say you ostensibly want less of
What we
are
need.
driving to work, driving your kids to school, putting the tractors in the fields, excuse me, to keep the working landscape, and heating your home in the wintertime.
Yep.
And these past couple of weeks, that home heating oil has come in darn handy.
I guess so.
Could you imagine how much it would cost you to fill up that tank when it's 20 below out? If it's an extra 40 cents per gallon, which is
Yep.
what they're talking about with this plan. This
Unbelievable.
latest one, the Essex plan. And what they would do with the money, ostensibly, is give it to the electric companies to lower electric rates.
Mm-hmm.
But it wouldn't be a one-for-one deal. I mean, people would come out, some people might come out winners, but most people would come out losers in this scenario.
You know, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I don't want to depend on the wind to blow or the sun to shine to ensure that I have power. Period. Simple. Let me do my thing. I'm a free American human being. I pay my bills. I've worked hard all my life. I'm still working in a sense. And just leave me alone. That's how I feel. Leave me alone. Now, the family leave, did you want to touch on that for a few minutes?
That's just another one of those things that the legislature thinks they know best. So they're talking about putting in a payroll tax on employees, not employers. The House passed this last session. The Senate's going to look at it this session. Speaker of the House, Mitchie Johnson, says this is her priority. And it's basically a government insurance It's an insurance program that the government will run and the government will mandate that you buy into. And it'll come right out of your salary. And what it would do is if you had a sick family member or a newborn child or something along those lines, you would be able to stay home with that child or with that sick relative for up to 6 weeks at 80% of your pay, up to
Wow.
$1,000 a week.
Wow.
Up to $1,000 a week. Now, the cost of this, this is scaled back, but the original plan that they were talking about, which was was more generous, I think it was 12 weeks, not 6 weeks, was about an $80 million program.
Wow.
That's an $80 million tax on people's payroll. But that number was calculated thinking that nobody would change their behavior based on this. They said the same number of people applying for sick leave would continue to apply for sick leave now than if you had this benefit, which is crazy. I mean, because if this benefit's there, if you're paying taxes into it, if somebody gets sick, hey, I'm going to take 5 weeks off. I'm going to take 6 weeks off.
So.
And then the cost will explode because the payroll tax, it's sort of the way the property tax works now. It's set at a very low rate. They set it at like 0.14% payroll tax to put this thing in place. But it's also got the language in the law says if more people try to claim the benefit, then the tax rate will automatically rise to meet the level of funding necessary for the program. And again, $70 to $80 million. That's huge. And it's a funny story about it is, you know why they made it just the employees and not the employers to pay for the original language in the bill when they were debating it was a 50-50 between the employee and the employer putting into this tax. You know why it's now only employees?
Not yet.
Because the legislators realized who's the biggest employer in the state?
The state.
The state. And they said, whoa, this is going to affect our budgets if we make the employer pay, so we're not going to do that. So, I mean, but that just goes to show you, this is a real problem. If the state passes this and the state has an obligation under this new law to pay money into this program, it's going to be a problem for us. But they don't then translate that into putting the same responsibility on the sandwich shop owner down the road is going to cause monumental problems for him or her.
I have a question. So, let's say I'm working at a company that has 30 employees, and this tax is in place. And then I have a new baby, and I choose to take my 6 weeks where I'm going to continue to be paid at 80% of my pay. So that tax that those 30 employees are all having withdrawn from their pay each week, where does that money go?
Well, it's an insurance program.
Does it cover me for those 6 weeks?
Well, it's not just those 30 employees. It's all the employees in the state put into the pool, and then whoever has a reason to draw from the pool will receive the benefit. I mean, it's just like any insurance program. But here's the funny thing. When they were debating this on the House floor last year, I think it was Representative Ann Donahue of Northfield put in an amendment and said, why don't we make this voluntary? So if you want this, like an insurance program, you can pay into it and receive the benefit. But if you don't want to pay into it, you don't have to. One of the people who was advocating for this stood up and said, if we made it voluntary, nobody would buy it.
We have to force it, right?
This is your legislature working on behalf of you, forcing you to buy into a program that they know that you wouldn't buy into unless you had a gun to your head. It's not, as you say, by the people, for the people. It's a bunch of people who think they know best, and they never do. They never do.
There's one. Time is very short. One thing. How much is the state short in how many millions to cover, what our expenses are? I know how many $1 billion are we short in the pension fund?
Oh, the pension. I think it's up to over $4 billion pension liability.
It's climbing exponentially. So how does that get taken care of? And
well, you should have David Coates come on the show sometime, and he's the expert, and I'm sure he would be able to talk for an hour on that. But it is a really big issue that is underreported, because at some point we're going to have to cover that $4 billion liability, and we're a very small state.
How many million are we short in the budget?
I think it was $45 million budget shortfall, although I just read an article today that it may be smaller than that. So that's good news.
Well, when we're driving people out of the state, we had, according to the governor recently, 2,000 taxpayers leave the state, okay? We're down to the last minute. So, how do you like all the good news, folks? Well, this is your government at work. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks, Linda. It's always fun to be here. And again, ethanallan.org is the website. I hope you'll check it out, learn a lot of information, sign up. You can sign up for our email newsletter. If you make a donation, you get the print newsletter, which has additional information in it. And there are plenty of ways to interact with us and learn about what's going on down at the State House.
Yeah, it's so informative. I love it. So, folks, thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great week ahead. And I have another great guest for next week all lined up. So just stay warm, and I'll see you next week. Good night.